Hello there, Leo Cheers from Mythmaster here with a birthday special. Yes, it's my birthday, or should be at least at the time that this releases. I'm actually writing and recording it in mid-March, but out of all the video ideas I had for a May 10th release, this seemed like the one I'd actually have enough motivation to make. One thing I'd start by saying is that if you are as big of a Percy Jackson fan as I am, I would strongly recommend checking out Casual View Productions, whose channel should hopefully be linked in the description. At the time of writing, he's making a series of videos called Rebuilding a Hero, where he looks at characters from the Heroes of Olympus series and goes over how he would change their arcs and characters. Plus, you can always expect lively conversations in the comments. But as for this video, I'm going to be going over the 7 heroes of prophecy from Rick Riordan's second Greek-centered series, The Heroes of Olympus. Full spoilers for Heroes of Olympus, as well as all of the Percy Jackson and Trials of Apollo books, though actually I'll try and keep the Trials of Apollo ones to a minimum, so yeah, there will actually only be spoilers for Heroes of Olympus and Percy Jackson. Editorial to say there is actually one kind of very minor spoiler thing, so I mentioned something in the Piper section, so skip over that if you don't want spoilers for Trials of Apollo. In last place, we have the only character I actively dislike, and that is Piper McLean. It's a bit annoying as she is the focal point for most of the encounters we have, with some of my favourite new villains of the series, those being Medea and Keone. While I have lost interest in Keone over the years, Medea is a top tier Riordan-verse villain for me. My main problem with Piper is just that she's extremely self-centered. She acts as if her thoughts and feelings are all that matter, and never really gets a chance to grow or anything, at least not in any substantial way. She is by far the least heroic of the crew of Iago 2, and her charm speak is possibly the worst written ability in the series, with it inexplicably having the ability to A. Bring a robot to life, and B. Put a primordial goddess to sleep. That's taking the power of friendship a bit too far, don't you think? And on top of this, despite her and Jason being a couple, and that basically being her main motivation after she rescues her dad in book 1, they break up off screen, so to speak, and don't end up getting there happily ever after. I don't mind tragic arcs and stuff like that, but to me it didn't make any sense for that to happen with Pipe and Jason, though if any couple were to break up, they were the one I cared the least about. Next up is Jason, and while I don't like Piper, I just don't really care for her boyfriend. I know he's supposed to be a stereotypical hero and whatever, but generally I don't like those characters, and Jason doesn't have enough substance to make me care for him. Despite being the first character we meet, he probably gets the least to do out of everyone, due to how often he is knocked out and incapacitated. He does have some okay aspects though, such as his interactions with Nico are quite good, and his powers are cool and fairly well used. He is a central character in the Greek-Roman schism, so to speak, and is hyped up to be the one to make a choice that will save the world or end it, but doesn't exactly do much in the final battle at all, and ends up choosing both camps. The thing is that I feel Percy does the Greek-Roman thing even better, because while he would obviously choose Greek if he had to come down to picking one, his time in Camp Jupiter and New Rome is much more impactful than anything we see with Jason and Camp Half-Blood. And even comparing Piper and Leo with Hazel and Frank, I can't believe I just said that and I'm actually going to keep it in. Frank and Hazel were already members of Camp Jupiter when Percy met them, while Piper and Leo found out about Camp Half-Blood at exactly the same time as Jason did, and both got promoted to cabin counselors basically immediately. Basically, Jason had potential, but was overshadowed in basically every area, and was more of a background character than anything else. Kind of finishing off the characters I don't really care for, we have Frank Zhang. Again, I don't really have anything against him, I just don't have anything for him either. The love triangle between him, Leo and Hazel is just awkward, and him suddenly becoming super muscular and handsome in House of Hades just seems like a bit of a cop-out for me. It's not handled terribly though, and he does have some good moments in House of Hades and Son of Neptune. Additionally, I think he's better than Piper at having a character who's opposed to their parents, so to speak, and his moments with Mars are much better than Piper's ones with Aphrodite. His shapeshifting is cool and is built up to very well as being used consistently and realistically. Not that turning into a dragon is realistic, but you know what I mean. He has limits, but the rule of cool also applies. And yeah. Additionally, it's cool to have an archer who isn't a child of Apollo, and cool to see another take on a child of Ares/Mars. While Frank is only maybe a 5 out of 10, Hazel is a big jump up and is a high 7 for me. Out of all the characters in the series, I feel that she probably has the most character development, and has one of the strongest emotional cores, especially in Son of Neptune. While, as previously stated, I didn't like the love triangle between Hazel, Frank, and Leo, I do like a lot of the stuff between Hazel and Leo, in both Mark Athena and House of Hades, with both the Nemesis and Narcissus encounter, and then the Pasiphae encounter in House of Hades. The two of them have some very meaningful conversations, and some of the best moments in the series. And then in House of Hades, she starts to learn to use the mist, which is a sub-arc in itself, with a clear beginning, middle, and end. Basically, in 2 of the 5 books, Hazel has one of the core arcs, and in another, she has great moments, and she's only in 4 of them. And yeah. To me, she is probably the most well-defined and human of the new characters in Heroes of Olympus, and feels most realistic in a way, due to how palpable and consistent her growth is. This and her myriad of powers, and the fact she has a friend who's an extremely fast horse, makes her probably the most underrated hero of the prophecy, in my opinion. In 3rd place, we have Leo Valdez, who is realistically the highest he could get, considering who is above him. Leo is an interesting case because I love him but can't fully explain why. He's not always that funny, and everything with Calypso is a bit messy, but he still manages to be in my top 3. Partially it's because of the amazing moments he shares with Hazel, which I went over in her section. Partially it's because his backstory is well fleshed out and sympathetic, and partially it's because, and I'm just realising all of these apply to Hazel as well, he has one of the most personal connections to Gaia. As I said earlier, his jokes don't always land, and they are sometimes just insults, but his personality and hyperactivity are fun and unique, and contrast with the guilt and self-hatred that kind of mark his own chapters. This conflict and his journey across the Lost Hero, and Mark of Athena especially, work well with him losing his mum in a fire that he caused, which led to him fearing his powers, which then he learned to overcome in The Lost Hero, only for him to be possessed in Mark of Athena, making him lose control again, and finally culminating in his confrontation with the Eidolons, and overcoming his struggles, even if he does just then blame himself for Percy and Annabeth falling into Tartarus. But luckily that is not a major part of his character going forward, and instead he was given Calypso because everyone needs a love interest. It may sound like I hate Callio, which is incorrect. It just involves one of my least favourite things, which is becoming a common occurrence in the Riordan verse, which is that it kind of retcons and downplays things in previous books, and makes them less impactful or just... Basically, there's just been a lot of kind of retcons in recent Riordan verse, which I'm not a fan of. But that's a topic for another video, one which I might have already made by the time this comes out. Leo has fire powers but doesn't solely rely on them, and they only act as an extension of his main tool, which is his mind. What I mean is that he doesn't just blast fire at a problem to solve it, but he does take his powers into account when problem solving, such as with lighting the homemade flashbang in House of Hades, or melting the chain in The Lost Hero. To conclude his section, Leo has some issues, especially in the later books in the series, but that doesn't stop him from being my favourite new demigod on board the Argo 2, which is actually a probably good time to say that Festus is great, and he and Leo have a great relationship, and it's always fun seeing Leo doing engineering on board the Argo, and making it fly with his Wii remotes. Even if the Archimedes, basically, I was just saying, the Archimedes 3 years are really cool, and I'm glad I was kind of followed up on him finding them and stuff. Now we come on to one of my favourite fictional characters of all time, Annabeth Chase. She is my favourite character in the Riordan verse, but like with Leo, this is the highest I can reasonably place her, and unlike Leo, she is half of one of the best romances, if not the best romance in all of fiction. Intelligence is one of my favourite traits for a fictional character to have, and Annabeth has it in bucket loads, but this doesn't mean she can instantly overcome any problem because this intelligence comes with flaws, such as her fatal flaw of hubris, that is to say, pride. She has many great moments, but one of the most memorable for me comes in the Battle of the Labyrinth, when she faces off with the Sphinx. She is getting all of the questions right, but she fails because she essentially tells the Sphinx that she's doing it wrong, as in the Sphinx is, because she's not telling the famous Sphinx riddle. And this kind of often rigid adherence perfectly complements Percy's more chaotic nature, and is an example of a hero failing due to how skillful they are. She has many other moments where she shines across the series that she appears in, but my favourite book for her would have to be Mark Athena, which is possibly my favourite fiction book of all time, where once again her beliefs are questioned as she experiences her mother in a new light and has to go on a quest by herself. Her chapters under Rome are a perfect example of using intelligence to overcome hardships, because, unlike Leo who can blast fire if he needs to, intelligence and a dagger is all that Annabeth has. There's also her invisibility cap and Daedalus's laptop, but her invisibility cap isn't working at this point in the series. And with the laptop, while I think it played a really good role in the Last Olympian, after she got it in Battle of the Labyrinth, I don't think it was kind of needed that much in the Heroes of Olympus, but it wasn't overused or anything. And it was sometimes used fairly, in a way. It was used well sometimes, such as with the finger trap with Frank. One aspect of her character that makes her feel so real is her love of architecture, which appears constantly throughout the first series, and again in Heroes of Olympus, such as when she uses it to bring down the chamber under Rome. There's also everything she does with Percy and Tartarus, which is just some of the best writing I've ever seen, and is the best example of Percy and Annabeth being perfect continuations of their characters from the first series. Basically, I have no issues with Annabeth across the first two series, and it's not just because every time I take a Godly Parent quiz, it gives me Athena. Finally is the one you've all been waiting for, Percy Jackson, because who else was it going to be? While I may like Annabeth more than him, I can't deny how well Percy is written, and having an entire amazing series from his point of view doesn't hurt at all. Like Annabeth, he remains consistently great across both his first two series, and this is even more of a miracle for him due to his aforementioned role as a focal character. Percy just, overall, is the nicest and most heroic of the bunch, with his literal fatal flaw being that he cares about his friends too much. While he doesn't have Annabeth or Leo level smarts, he's not exactly an idiot, and comes up with several plans in dire situations, such as when the Argo is attacked by Chrysaea, or when he, and I'm pretty sure it's him though, it could maybe be Annabeth telling him or Annotaeus just giving it away, figures that Annotaeus must be off the ground for him to be able to defeat him. Basically, he's really good at battle strategy and stuff. Additionally, he is the best fighter, and the combination of his swordplay and hydrokinetic abilities always lead to dynamic and interesting fights. Basically, I can't really think of any reason to dislike him or criticize him, and as with Annabeth, he gets points for being one part of my favourite fictional couple of all time. I would like to say more, but nothing really comes to mind, so I think I'm just going to end this section by saying that Percy Jackson is one of the greatest fictional characters of all time. If you've enjoyed this video, then consider liking, subscribing, hyping and or commenting how you drank the 7. If all goes to plan, I should have a video coming out on my second channel in about a week, so go check that out if you like Marvel. Remember, God loves you, have a good day, and, as always, ta-ta.